All right, getting back to that quick reversal satellite. Oh, we got a good one, and we've got a sent-in contribution from our good friend the Meanderer that has been sitting in my inbox, eagerly awaiting our attention, and I've just been well. One of the things he wants to know more about the origin of the PQ River, and I just please, coincidentally, is speaking of origins. My dad passed in the last week. This was not unexpected. In fact, it was probably, one of without going into too much detail, it was not unexpected. And all long term, it's enough suffering. Enough said there. Yeah, and in other, we had over the last weekend, we did our first. I did. The royal we. I performed locally for our local art hop. My first solo show in a long time. And that was, well, I did that stream a while back at the beginning of the coof that's on Facebook floating around somewhere. But I haven't done to just stand there and play by myself in a long time. So that was kind of interesting. And it was the heat. It was like 100 degrees outside, and it was an outdoor stand outside with your amp kind of a thing. Although I sat on a bench, and that was fine. I looked particularly intense, so I think it worked. Let's see. We will have some music. We will hear, as I said, from the Meanderer. I got all kinds of catchy uppy stuff and things that are written down on pieces of paper. So there will be the driveling, and man, I have been just trying to organize all of the movies and just video in general that I have downloaded over the years and saved on various drives, and it really is amazing what stacks up as I am browsing and picking and downloading, and I it's like my nest egg. If they ever go crazy enough to restrict the internet severely, or something else happens, I mean, as long as I have electricity, I will have, and one of these gizmos actually still works by that point, I will at least have the Bowery Boys movies to watch. And I mean, what more could you ask for in a situation where civilization has completely crumbled than to watch Leo Gorcey and Hunts Hall entertain?
Sometimes the music gets strange. Oh yeah, strange encounters.
Oh yeah, we're just rolling right along here at your Quakeversal satellite, the one and only. And let's see, let's hand the floor over to the Meanderer, because I've been curious as to what he sent here.
Good morning. Pleasant sounds until we get to the outer traffic area. This is being recorded on July 2nd, 2021, around 6:45 a.m. as I head towards work. Undecided yet whether I'll walk most of the way or take buses. We'll see. Anyway, the purpose of this was radio origin story, because I was inspired by a Exit Ramp episode where PQ mentions his radio history, and of course there were brief mentions to Frank's WFMU era. So I thought it would be cool to get people's origin story with audio, whatever that means. I remember our household was very radio centric, as long as I can remember. Like, we would call into radio stations and win prizes. This is very random, but I remember calling into a local station. It used to be called CKR. It has changed into something else. The host was Christy Walsh, kind of legendary. I think he died like in the last decade or maybe more. And they asked me what my favorite song was. I'm pretty sure I said it was Jive Bunny, because Jive Bunny was a thing in the mid-90s. It was this pastiche of 50s hits or something. It's very weird. Anyway, I forget if I answered a question during the call, but I ended up winning, quotation marks, a CD, which was the soundtrack to Last of the High Kings, which is titled Summer Fling in the US for some reason. It was Jared Leto's movie role after My So-Called Life, and he made it in Ireland. It was pretty cool. I exited the theater when I saw the film onto a street that was featured in the film. I think that was the only time that happened. I suspect that's happened to Frank a lot. She goes to see movies in Times Square. My dad used to listen to radio in the milk van, and I was a captive in the milk van a lot. I worked with my dad, who was a door-to-door milk delivery person. I remember, I think Gareth O'Callaghan was the host, and Mrs. Brown's Boys was this weird audio comedy drama that felt like a flash in the pan in the mid-90s. But then after I moved here, it became this huge phenomenon in the UK on TV, like outshining Father Ted. Father Ted is vastly superior, of course. And the creator of Mrs. Brown's Boys also made a movie called The Mammy, I think, featuring Angelica Houston. Like, OMG. It's weird, you know, when you start with radio bits where you can go. Or at least that was true decades ago. I can see two deer. One of them is tiny. It's very, very adorable. I'm hesitant to walk away, but I guess I should. They'll probably run at some point. Or maybe they're coming my way and I should just let them. I live on a hill. Rural-ish. About a mile and a half from downtown, maybe. 40-minute walk. So, again, 90s, I liked to sing. I performed at a cousin's weddings. In fact, that recording is extant on archive.org, or at least last time I checked it was. I think a subject line was Brendan Archive. There was some singing. It could be gone by now, I don't know. So eventually I craved a karaoke player. In this case it would have been like a double take deck with a microphone. And you would get cassettes with lyrics on the inlay card. In some cases they would have like a guiding track to, you know, a generic singer. I don't know how they got away with it copyright-wise, but anyway. But one of the things I used that for was recording movies. Like I had a tape of Monty Python. And I think I had one of Scream. I liked Scream a lot. So at college I did a year of philosophy. It was my first time away from home. I didn't make friends easily. It was quite a depressing time. Saw Leaving Las Vegas 12 times in theaters. It's kind of a good indicator of what kind of year that was for me. I didn't continue after that 1 year. So like no certificate, no degree, whatever. I also remember one embarrassing moment. Even more embarrassing from a 2021 perspective. In fact, cancelable if footage existed. Because I did an audition piece for Jesus Christ Superstar. And what I chose was, obviously, Ezekiel 25:13 from Pulp Fiction. The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the iniquities of the selfish. Anyway, we're getting too loud of traffic too quickly. So I fail that. I get stuck at home for a while. I read a book called Succeed for Yourself. I start doing the vision board type thing, you know, mentally envisioning where I want to be, who I want to be. I apply for a radio media course. I think it only lasted 8 months. It's probably one of the more memorable phases of my life. And I succeeded. Like, I think it was actually an interview, and it was in a different town, like technically 2 hours away, but I had to get a bus to Dublin and then from Dublin, so for me it was like 3 to 4 hours away. It was in Waterford. So the class had a studio and a low-range transmitter. So we actually did radio stuff. It was cool. I remember we did a scene of Hamlet on my instigation. Presumably the big one. And I created a Elvis mini documentary, 7 minutes long. I think that was the exam piece. People liked it. There was also like print stuff involved. Damn, I don't remember what the program was. Microsoft Publish, is that a thing? I don't even know. But I had a movie magazine called Cineview. And I think Austin Powers was on the front. And I had this remarkably inventive idea to create a CK2 ad, mostly because it featured 2 images of Kate Moss instead of 1. So that led to an internship of sorts at a radio station closer to my house. And then after the internship, I think I worked at a video store for a while and then applied for paid work at the same place and was accepted. This too was a relatively brief period of time, maybe a year. But a very important year, like it's why I'm here, because I had access to the internet. And then that propelled me to get my first computer around 98, 99. Oh well, The silence was when went last time. So it was mostly like just overnights and monitoring computer equipment. But I heard, I think it was PQ, talk about how he hated not being able to choose what went on the air. And like, this was overnight. Sometimes it went off for an hour or two and no one noticed. So I managed to slip in a song or two that I really liked. I think one was Just Wanna Dance the Night Away by the Mavericks, which I'm fairly sure I got from the From Dusk Till Dawn soundtrack. And it's like this pop powerhouse radio station that theoretically had millions of listeners. It's broadcast to the UK. In fact, it represented itself almost as a pirate station, even though it wasn't. It's a very weird scenario. The station was Atlantic 252. It's got a Wikipedia page and everything. Now defunct, as are most things. As we get closer to the interstate, I'll try to be brief. Should probably not be so brief. Moved to the US in 2000. Couldn't work due to the visa issue for a year or so. Late summer 2001, I get work part-time at the local radio corporation. It's similar work, monitoring. In some cases, I think I would have to record like weather and traffic feeds for a morning show. But I had to run out of place, and one of the things I remember creating there was be singing along with the Buffy musical episode. That was a lot of fun. When I got on air, I don't think I got on. Like, I didn't get on air at Atlantic 252, but I was actually physically doing the thing for a brief spat when the computers went down, like inserting the CDs and carts, controlling the output. That was pretty cool. I got one on-air stint somehow, I don't even remember how, before I left the local corporation. I mostly left because we're going to start talking about it again. My wife had attachment issues, and it was becoming aware on our marriage for me to be away overnights at some point. So it was like this, I think it's like a 2 to 3 hour thing. I recorded the links, all that bullshit. Well, you know, it was pre-recorded and went out. And I taped it. And I only remember the embarrassing parts. Like mispronouncing Billy Joel, which in Ireland is not mispronouncing, it's just pronouncing. I think fun part's over. Let's pause.
Ah, yes, origins. And we all grew up in different times of different technologies. Now, my audio recording history, as opposed to my being on the internet and onsug, goes much farther back. There are reel-to-reel tapes recorded by my Uncle Harry back in the earliest part of the 60s. I might be like 2 years old, 3 years old. There are reel-to-reels, and I've heard them. I think some of them were put onto cassettes back in the 80s, back when my friends and I were just... There was this whole cassette culture thing we were doing. It started as making each other mixtapes, and the mixtapes got less and less music and more of us just like talking at one another and doing shtick and teaming up with it was an interesting era. Unfortunately, most of the material that we did back then The political correctitude might be a problem. The references to real existing people who are still alive, and if they aren't, their families are. It just makes, even considering delving into that for public release at this point, I mean, maybe, 50, 100 years from now, after all the dust settles and we've all moved on to other worlds, those recordings will be out. But yeah, I was a precocious young lad, and my Uncle Harry was a documenter of such, family events and stuff. So there are some reel-to-reel recordings of me very young, and then my cousins, his kids, they got tape players and recorders pretty young on, and were making tapes, and I would get kind of drawn into it. That there's recordings of me dating back, I think, to when I was 6 or 7 years old, for certain, there in the archives, embarrassing childhood. Oh man, Frank is a lot more easy about releasing the stuff he did when he was a kid. I just want to curl up and cringe somewhere. It's hard enough releasing this stuff here with me driveling on about such things, but oh boy. But if I can ever, it's difficult to get him now. The archive, I guess, is stowed away somewhere. It used to be much more at hand, but I don't think it is any longer. So who knows if or when these famous recordings will surface. But that's what sparked the whole thing. I mean, going over to my cousins and making tapes was like that. It was a pastime. I would read some comics. We'd watch some monster movies. We'd make some tapes. There'd be some sleepovers. It was a fascinating youth growing up. And then I started, I got too young for them. We had a big age difference, my cousins and I. And at a certain point that hit a critical mass, and they were teenagers and I was still just a little kid. So I had to go out and make my own friends. And I managed to drag making tapes into almost everything. And thankfully, the most, if not all of it, as far as I know, no longer exists. And I was always interested in being on radio. And when I was a little kid, I don't know, maybe, well, not that little, probably 13, 12, in there, there was a local station, but it was one town over. But they had this little satellite office where the news was done from, for some reason, in my town. And I managed to make friends with the guy. What was his name? Bill Lang. Bill Lang was patient enough to let me sit there and watch him do newscasts, and he showed me how he put them together, editing tapes and recording stuff on this little portable recorder, and then transferring it to this really weird early, it was a cart machine in that, but it used a much bigger cartridge, and it was more device set up to put tones on them so things would start and stop when you wanted them to, because that was the real key. And that was the cool thing about carts, is you could set them up, and when you pressed a button, it would, oh man, it was like the drop boards they have now, but this was like, whoa, look at that. The cart machines were really cool. The whole Negative Land show, Over the Edge, was done with cart machines, a lot of it. Just a great tool before digital came in and made everything just so much easier and so much more pleasant. But that was my first taste of how radio was done. Then I snuck into college down in Pennsylvania between my junior and senior year of high school, simply by telling them I had already graduated, and nobody ever checked. So I attended a couple classes, and a fellow, this is another legendary name of history, named Dave Wuchina. I mean, he really took me under his wing and taught me how to use a board and how to cue up records properly and how to read a newscast as opposed to a commercial read, and really gave me some good background in just a few weeks that I was down there in that summer program, taking art classes and playing a lot. I mean, the record collection at that college, that the Indiana University of Pennsylvania, in Indiana, Pennsylvania, which is just a little ways outside of Pittsburgh. Yeah, I summered at my aunt's in Homer City, Pennsylvania, and attended the Indiana University of Pennsylvania and learned radio. And
To sound older, I remember I affected a very deep voice.
which, I grew into being able to just pretty much talk, and which is a good thing because that stentorian thing went out in about 1937, if I'm not mistaken. Continuing from there, I finally managed to land a job in local radio at WSUL in Monticello, New York, doing overnights, which, oh man, like you were saying there, Meanderer, that's just a strange thing, being alone with all this equipment, and everything's pretty much, they had an automation system that pretty much just ran the music, and I had to do the news at the top of every hour and and hit the weather cart and play a couple of commercials, and everything else ideally was automated, and I'd be the one who would program the automation system for the following day. And at the beginning of my tenure, they channeled in Bruce Williams and Sally Jesse Raphael, and I had to sit there and wait for the commercial breaks and fade them down and punch in our local commercials and then fade them back. Oh boy, what a career radio was. Yeah, radio. And then, of course, when you did get a chance, oh, here you go. You should do a 3-hour shift on Saturday afternoons, and you get all excited. Then you realize it's just going to be you in between that same music that torments you all the time. That is just this awful adult contemporary. Anne Murray meets Johnny Mathis, some Billy Joel, but only nothing too raucous here. It's very, let's get some, maybe Barbara Streisand and Neil Diamond will do a lovely duet for us now. Oh, I just was never feeling it. And that was, I mean, I did workman-like work. But thankfully, those air checks got lost in my first cross-country trip to Santa Fe when a box of almost all my old air checks. Somebody broke into my car, and what do they steal? I mean, almost everything else in the car, I mean, it would have sucked to lose it. But the one thing that was irreplaceable and almost sure for a stranger to have, well, I guess blank cassettes used to actually have some value. Now people will give you like a whole, you want these cassettes? How many you got? I don't know, about 5,000? It's just amazing how devalued something that was so precious has become with that. And then that led into the time of the making of tapes. Again, when we all got older, I started hanging around my cousin again, and then we made other friends, and it really became a small society of tape crafters and doing something very similar to what we do here, cutting in interesting things we'd find in other places with a lot less regard for copyright, of course, and making fun of one another ruthlessly and everybody else. I mean, that was the thing back then with shock jocks and radio hosts at the time and being just growing. I mean, people are just so much nicer out west, and especially here in New Mexico. And I'm still pretty sharp and pretty sarcastic for this particular environment, but I am nowhere near what God, I don't know. It's just it's a remarkable change in culture for me, because I mean, when I look back, just as friends, we would just relentlessly tease and needle one another, and that's just either we grew out of it, or the times have changed, or was it a New York thing? Let's have another musical selection here now. Oh yes, some angsty music from the vaults. I don't know. That's not that old. Last year sometime. Nonetheless, more stuff that I don't even think that's released officially anywhere, but you get to hear it here because there's nothing like the Quick Reversal satellite. And yeah, let's take a look at what I've been doing on the YouTube, because we do that right about now, or at least my instincts are leading me to say that we do. I've got some Gatorade here. I don't know. I think this might be better here. We also have some black cherry New York seltzer. Mm-hmm. Much better. Yeah, that's what we needed. Let's see. We were listening to the New Pornographers, a great Canadian band that I guess they almost make it, and then they don't, and then they've been around for like a zillion years. Uh, Boy, almost 20 years. And there's sort of a quote unquote Canadian supergroup, the Nico Case, who also has quite a solo career as a singer, songwriter, kind of a country rock thing. She's a brilliant voice. She's in and out of the band depending how busy she is. And the rest of the band, it basically is the brainchild of somebody named A.C. Newman, and they've got a bunch of albums, and they all are well worth listening to. And you can start from the beginning or the middle or the end. I'm not even going to say, oh, you must hear this one, or because your taste may vary. And I was trying to look into, and it's just, I guess, well, just tragic is the best word for it. Back in the days of fusion jazz, there was a band called Weather Report that I used to listen to, and their bass player, Jaco Pastorius, was, even today, compared to bass players today, Jaco Pastorius was an anomaly, a one-of-a-kind genius of the bass guitar, and apparently I still don't understand, I guess nobody else does either, how somebody so talented could go the way he did, but he was apparently, on the skids, he wasn't particularly mentally healthy, and he got on the wrong side of a let's see, what would you call it? A bouncer at a club he had kicked in the door of, and you basically beaten to death. But us musicians, us creative people, we're right. You do not lose sight at any given time that we are all right on the edge of some crazy outburst. Is that how I'm going to go? One day I'll just have had enough, and I'll go flip-flopping off into La La Land. It's a thought. I've been watching, there's a channel called Flipside CT, all one word, and they're doing documentaries on the making of Rolling Stones albums, skipping around, but the one that caught my attention is, and he's still in the middle of it, the making of the Black and Blue album, which is very interesting because this was the transition time. Mick Taylor was leaving the band, the Stones were huge, and they needed another guitarist, and they were rolling in all of these guitarists from all over to possibly be the next lead guitarist for the world's greatest rock and roll band, which at the time you could make a great case that they were. You could make a case, as far as I'm concerned, maybe up to Steel Wheels, somewhere in that vicinity, and then the self-parody and the fixed, it just, I don't know, I wish somebody could lead me into more modern Stones albums and performances and an appreciation of them. I just, my interest just goes zzz, but this is fascinating. And he's also done a couple of others on like Let It Bleed, which is the last Brian Jones album for all intents and purposes, which is very informative about Brian Jones. Check him out. It's a good channel. Once again, the channel is Flipside CT, all one word. The Doobie Brothers reunited with Michael McDonald. They have apparently re-recorded Taking It to the Streets, and I don't even want to know. I have this sneaking suspicion about why they got back together and the spin that they're putting on it, and I'll just oh man, everybody, why? Oh, and Conor McGregor, the MMA fighter, very controversial for being a brash lad and getting in trouble. And of course, he had that fight with Mayweather. That I don't know. I go back and forth on this. I think Mayweather possibly could have taken him out and didn't, but maybe I'm wrong. It's hard to say. I don't know whether what was good for business was done or what, but he had a terrible, he had a terrible fight this past weekend where I guess he stepped back wrong. Oh, I can't take compound fractures. And yeah, his ankle just went in a direction that ankles don't belong going. And I really, yeah, that's one thing I will never be. I can't watch surgery videos. I can't watch shots of a compound fracture. Oh yeah, that'll just tighten me right up and the eyes clamp shut and everything. It's pretty amazing. Certain things that can have a neurological effect on us all. But yeah, well, I guess is that an end to his career? I mean, it seems like some people are trying to minimize it, but he took himself a beating before they finally stopped the fight. That changes a man. And it's one thing to lose a fight and you're competing. It's another thing that you're curled up on the ground and a very talented guy who possibly might have been able to beat you even if you weren't sitting there trying to figure out what you're going to do about this ankle and this guy pounding away at you. These are situations that I have carefully avoided through life, and I just, oh man, it just hit me near my face once, and I please.
And if you need a good laugh,
there's a Bill Burr bit entitled "Ric Flair is the funniest human being," and yes, I like Bill Burr, and it's a pretty good stand-up bit. It's from his live stuff, and you may well enjoy that very much. If you want to hear some good jazz zappa without really any lyrics and just like going for it, there is a Frank Zappa track that I will recommend to you now, the title of it being "The Ocean is the Ultimate Solution," and it's a long one. It's a long, jazzy, fusiony instrumental with some incredible bass work by Pat O'Hearn. It's got some fabulous drumming by Terry Bozzio, and Zappa is using this really funky tuning for the rhythm guitar part, and it plays you got to check it out. This is great Zappa, let me tell you. Oh, and I did want to mention and plug the Midnight Citizen. He's doing these live streams that you can actually participate in the chat and watch him do it live on YouTube, which I think is really cool. I finally was up at the right time, and I caught most of his stream this past weekend. It's just fun stuff, and he's got the Mike Booty channel on YouTube, and of course his shows are later posted on our very own onsugcomp31366.com, which if you're not listening to this on that site, there's a lot more like this over there. Great hosts, great shows. We just did a fabulous Overnightscape Central, which is the show that we do each and every week that, well, it's unique in that even you can be part of the fun. And yet Chad and Frank joined us for mistakes was the topic. And there's just so much great stuff on the Overnightscape Underground, and you should listen to it all. I listen to it all. You should listen to it all. You should make all your friends. Force them. I'm telling you, it's really easy to do. You just... Anyways, enough promotion for one program. That'll about do it for this time around. There's always more. Oh, yes, there's so much more to come. And between now and then, well, first off, if you would like to be like the Meanderer and join us for some sort of feature, or you have an idea of something I should do, topics you feel I should address, or you'd be interested in my opinions, my judgments on, you can send all of those sorts of things to kpqr.torc@gmail.com. I will say it again, kpqr.torc@gmail.com is where you should send all that sort of thing, and be part of the magic, be part of the fun. You oughta. Anyways, speaking of fun, all of us together, let's do it. Set the controls for the heart of the fun. Catch you the next time with any luck.